Welcome to Third Side Convo with your host, Bob Phipps. Your panelists today are Brandon Berger, Jeff Nolan, Michelle Walters, and Bill Russell. And now, your host, Bob Phipps.
Welcome, everyone, to Third Side Convo, where the panelists pick the topic just minutes before we go live and somehow still have plenty to say. Tonight, we had 15 minutes to kind of hash it out, and we were meeting a new person because we got a new panelist tonight. Brandon's here. And with 3 minutes to spare, we locked down our topic, and I knew what it was going to be. It ended up being about tariffs. Now, it's really in the news right now, and this is a perfect time to start to understand this a little bit because that's what we do here. You know, we're going to talk about stuff we're maybe going to learn, but with zero prep and 100% opinion, our panel of friends who disagree sometimes is about to get loud, get real, and if we're lucky, find something they actually agree on. So let's get going here. So I'm going to go on and I'm going to start out with Jeff in this one, actually being the experienced panelist and kind of help Brandon how to, what to say. Opening thoughts on tariffs, and again, now remember, as the rules of Uber Discourse says, no mention of any politician's name. You can refer to Republicans, you can refer to the administration. I don't want it about the acts. I want to learn something today. Jeffrey, take it off.
Well, we're having this discussion on Thursday, April 3rd. So a few hours ago in the United States, blanket tariffs were placed across effectively every country other than Belarus, Russia, and North Korea. And I don't think there's anybody who can defend that as wise economic policy. And if there is, I would like my friends on the right to explain to me why I'm wrong. It's idiotic.
Excellent start. Who wants to go with that one?
I'll be your Huckleberry.
All right, you sure? All right, Bill.
Okay. No, this is great. It is a great economic policy. It's something that has been needed to be done for decades. As a conservative, we believe in fair trade, but it's essential that fair trade be free trade, but it's essential that free trade be fair trade. These tariffs that were imposed were reciprocal tariffs that these nations, that all of our trading partners have had on us for years. And yes, there will be some initial growing pains as people adjust to the shock of it and realize they can't, that there will be some additional cost initially, but those costs will come down as the tariffs even the market out.
Well, Bill, let me ask you, I had a feeling you were going to say something to that effect, and fair enough. I disagree, but fair enough. When you say some pain for a while, what do you consider a while?
I think it's going to last
a month. What are we talking about?
I think the initial pain is going to last. It will be less than a couple of months, I believe, because what you're going to have is the initial shock where everybody's going to, maybe hoard some things, or there will be certain items that go up in price, but then there will be others that are going to come down. And then there are other pieces of this puzzle that over the course of the next, before the next election cycle, I think we will see a strong and vibrant economic recovery across the board with the effects of all the incoming reshoring of industries that are going to be coming back to the United States are going to be in full effect.
Bill,
okay, Bill, I can't wait. Hey, Bill, I can't wait till 2 months from now when we're back on the show again, re-talking about tariffs and the effect of what's going on. Brandon, you're a teacher. Does what both of them said make sense? Is there a chance for both things to happen?
Well, the way I'm going to play both sides on this, and on I agree with Bill that it does need to be some sort of fairness in terms of free trade. However, the tariffs that are being imposed currently, the fact that some of them are extensively higher on specific countries, and to be honest, I'm not even sure why, for whatever economic reasons there are for these extremely high tariffs, like the increase of tariffs on Canada, on Mexico, on China. I don't know why the tariffs are so exponentially higher than they are with every other country, and why, more to the point, they're lower with, as Jeff pointed out, Belarus, Russia, and North Korea.
Wow, that is
that's one thing. Now, the Bill, actually, I wanted to come back to Bill. You
Yeah.
mentioned that there's some things are going to go up during these growing pains, but others are going to be going down. Can you give me an example of some products that will go down in cost?
There will be other products. And before we address that, and the reason why I'm going to hedge on that, because it's a general economic principle. So we'll come back and we'll let the market play out. We'll see those in the next couple of months. But anyway, getting back to the point on why some of those tariffs are exponentially high, Canada's a good example. They have exorbitant, exceptionally high tariffs on dairy products that are very protective of their own industries. And we're simply going to a reciprocal balance on that to say, let's get rid of the tariffs altogether. Let's have a true free trade between our nations. If they go to zero, we'll go to zero. And that's why I don't think the effects of these tariffs are going to necessarily cause prices to go up terribly, because most of the players involved are going to come back and say, you know what, we'll go to zero, you go to zero, and we'll trade from there. With regard to Russia, Belarus, and North Korea, we don't have trade agreements with them, so we don't have trade, so there's no tariffs.
Yeah, there is no tariffs.
Yeah, I was wondering that. Okay, Michelle, now that the guys have totally muddled it all up, okay, it's your turn, as it always is. Jump right in, darling.
Brilliant and beautiful. Let's go.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I mean, really, overall, though, I want to sit there and look at it. This is reciprocal. I mean, this is nothing that's new. This has been going on, forever with regards to tariffs. And what we're trying to do, though, is it's trying to even the playing field here. And I mean, overall, you kind of have to look at what our current administration is trying to do is bring certain jobs back, trying to increase our economy and try to create balance with us and our trade partners. Really, I mean, that's what it boils down to, plain and simple. So that's what I was kind of wondering, though, where the disagreement came in, though, with regards to with Jeff, is do you disagree on tariffs? Do you not think that we should be paying more or less, or do you think that we should be equivalent with regards to our various different partners that we trade with? That is my question, because I mean, right now, as it currently stands, I mean, there's huge inequities, with particular countries. I mean, with China, with Vietnam, there's huge ones. And so how is it that where we have to bear much more of the responsibility than other countries have to? I'm just saying, I mean, at what point are we allowed to sit there and say, okay, we need to even out the playing field here? Because at the end of the day, we're the strongest economy in the world. We are. I mean, we dominate there with regards to our GDPs. We dominate there with regards to our, our economy, our everything that we produce. So why is it that we?
Well, let's just talk about why is reciprocal bad.
Brandon had his hand up. I do have a response to that, but Brandon was being patient there.
Okay. Well, okay. Again, there are good points and there are not so good points there. Yes, having these tariffs is going to create some sort of equality, but I feel like putting these exorbitantly high ones right now is kind of alienating us from the global society. As Bill Russell said, this agreement of we'll go to zero if you go to zero, it just kind of sounds like a game of global economic chicken. Like,
a global economic chicken, though, is being able to sit there and bring somebody to the table and say, okay, well, how do we create some equality here? And we've got to start somewhere. We do. We have to absolutely start somewhere. So
true, and I understand your point about bringing jobs.
This is a fluid negotiation. This is something that is ongoing. It's not permanent. It's not, even our current administration has basically, come out and said, hey, listen, we're willing to sit there and take the phone calls and finding out, let's make a deal. Let's, let's make a trade. So
right, I see your point about that, and I understand also your point about bringing jobs back to America. My primary concern is things like yes, there are some things that we buy from other countries that we can produce here. The question is the cost of doing that cheaper than importing it from other countries? That's the question, because then if it's more expensive to do it here than it is to get it from another country, that would explain why having a high tariff from said country would make sense. Like, I actually lived in China for several years, and I have a lot of friends over there who didn't want to buy iPhones because yes, China is one of the biggest manufacturers of iPhones and Apple products. But here's the thing. I actually walked into an Apple store one day. I was in Beijing. I was walking into an Apple store. I asked the guy, how much is this iPhone? I think it was the iPhone 8 at the time. And I checked out the price. They told me the price. I converted it into US dollars. And then I asked one of my parents who were back in the US, and they said a different price. And I was like, oh my God, the price on an iPhone in China is 30% higher than it is in America. And I thought at first that didn't make any sense. Yeah. But then I was thinking like, oh, okay. Then I was like, so yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it's even now it still doesn't make sense to me. But again,
look, Jeff, you can explain it, right?
An iPhone here, if we can manufacture an iPhone here, would that increase the price of the iPhone? Or
they're never going to manufacture iPhones here, Brandon. That's never going to happen.
Well, but that comes further to my second point is there are some things that we just can't make here. And so imposing a tariff of exceedingly high rate on a country that produces something that we can't produce here is, especially if it's something important, is going to cause a lot more negative effects down the road.
All right.
Well, look, there's a cost to being the leader of the free world. There's a cost to hegemony, and it involves soft power, it involves economic power, and sometimes that might mean some other entities get what seems to be, an unfair deal. Or, oh, gee, they're taking advantage of us. And that may very well be true. But what are the wider implications of the United States allowing that to happen? There's so much more that the U.S. has positioned itself as being responsible for globally than just simple math equation, economic equity. And one thing that has been driving me insane is it feels like this administration and the current crop of supposedly intellectual conservatives, I wish there were more Bill Russells and fewer, I can't say politicians' names, but you know what I'm saying.
We know who you're talking about.
There's too many, there's no shortage. It always seems to come down to, they're ripping us off. Money, we need money. Well, NATO's not doing this, or we got to tariff that. There's more going on here than just money.
And I think, Jeff, we got to take our first.
As a leader of the free world, and that comes with cost and responsibility.
I agree with you.
We don't want to be that. We just made moves to put us on track to not be that.
All right, we have to take our first break. Jeff, you're not being heard now, but you're right. Is there a responsibility? I think we look at ourselves as the leader of the free world, and how do we have to act like that? Is this just a ploy? We don't know, but we've got to go on and get to our first sponsor. And please, subscribe, check out this, but let's just go straight to the sponsor right now.
Aw, Dad, my computer's slow again and I can't play my games.
Call Your Computer Solutions today, and we will scan for viruses and clean that computer up remotely and make it fast again. Our phone number is 407-826-0810.
Thanks, Dad. My computer's fast again. Now I can do my homework. Thanks for calling Your Computer Solutions at 407-826-0810. The Typia Show would like to thank Boggy Creek Airboat Adventures for being one of our sponsors. I got to go on an airboat and saw a real gator. I even got to go to the gem mine and mine for some gems. We ate a steak dinner at the restaurant and even got some gator bites. If you want to have a blast with the entire family, I suggest you go to www.bcairboats.com right now. Get your tickets today. The website again is bcairboats.com.
Welcome back. Well, we probably already learned a little more than if you'd have watched any one political show, just because we've got a little bit of balance here. Brandon, you're doing great, but you can take a little, be a little tougher on those guys on the right, because, what do they know? But, is this just a ploy, I guess, what I'd like to talk about? Is this just a debate, a negotiating ploy? Bill, is that what you believe this is? To maybe, in other words, tariffs were what the country used, right, to raise money. And tariffs do raise money for the government, correct? Or is it all about, where does the money go, I guess is what I'm saying. What is this tariffs anyway? How's that?
Well, a tariff is really nothing more than a tax. Now, as far as whether or not is this just a negotiating ploy, it is definitely a negotiating ploy, but I think it's much more. Jeff brought up several of the issues that have been going on for decades. Throughout the Cold War, basically the United States made the world safe for international commerce. The United States Navy kept open the lines of communication between the world's countries to allow for safe passage throughout the world, and that provided the economic environment in which things have excelled. Now, as a lot of these nations, for example, as they came online and doing trade with the United States, many of them were very small, and I'll use Vietnam as a good example. Vietnam, as it recovered from the Vietnam War, engaged in trade with the United States, but then imposed tariffs to protect its tiny market. Before, it was just such a nominal piece. But now when you add that up to 150 countries across the world, including our major players who have very strong economies that have recovered from World War II, these are major economies in the European Union. They should be paying their fair share. And I think the time has just come to where we've got to say, okay, enough. Let's get back to true free trade that is beneficial to the United States, because we cannot afford to foot the bill for keeping all of these nations free and keeping their trade lines free while getting screwed by them economically.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Jeff or Brandon, who wants to answer?
Absolutely.
What's wrong with that thinking?
Well, I mean, I don't. Look,
nothing wrong with
there's
that.
plenty that's not wrong about what Bill said, but I think that there's a much wider thing going on here. I think that these, to Bill's point, these things will cause the countries with the tariffs on them to make a deal. I agree. I just don't think that deal is necessarily with the United States. If there are Pacific nations, China, obviously, that are absolutely viable for many countries to tether themselves to economically, especially when the United States is having utter chaos happening, which is the case right now. And I think that's objectively true. Now, I'll give you an example. If I was a CEO right now of a company that manufactured something, and the whole idea here, supposedly, one of the ideas is that this forces companies to bring manufacturing back to the United States. That sounds lovely. Let's say that one of us is the CEO of a major manufacturer.
Okay.
Why would you invest billions of dollars in manufacturing facilities in the United States when, as has been shown time and time again over the past couple months, these tariffs can change on a whim, sometimes in the course of one day? So you're like, oh, well, economically, it makes sense for us to build a factory in Duluth. So break ground, everybody. 20 minutes later, oh, tariffs are off because the dictator or the president of this country said that I was a good golfer to the president of the United States. And all of a sudden, it's the best person in the world and no tariffs for them. How do you run a business without any consistency, without knowing what the economic policy of the country you're operating in is?
Michelle, did you read into a little bit of that, where they're, how they're deciding these tariffs? What did you look into?
You know what, though? I didn't necessarily know exactly how they're determining it. I know that they have their think tank, though, with the current administration. They have, these top economists that are going through on the various different countries and industries and really trying to decipher on what's the best course of action. But it's still, at the end of the day, you have to look at, though, our manufacturing jobs, though, we're losing them left and right. We need to be able to sit there and bring back some of these jobs, these industries back into America again. And the sad part about it, though, is, again, I think at the end of the day, we've been looking at cost of things of trying to, okay, fine, it's cheap, let's just go ahead and go to China. But at the end of the day, that's losing American jobs. Great, yes, it's nice to be able to sit there and purchase, inexpensive products, but at what cost? At the cost of, our American economy. And that's what my concern is because at least what the current administration is, they're trying to put us first. They're trying to put this on an even playing field. And granted, yes, it is. This is a fluid process and there's lots of moving parts. And I think that really needs to be understood.
All right, Brandon, you've got a unique perspective with your time in China. What do you think the Chinese think about all this? Because you probably stay up on that stuff.
There's 1.5 billion people in China. I doubt more than 20% of them are even following this or even care. They're just kind of going about they're all just kind of going about their lives because they don't really have a say in the political spectrum. Well, to be fair, they don't have elected officials. The officials are not their officials in the government are not elected as such. However,
No, and not only that, though, but I don't even think that they have the, you know what I mean, the freedom of information like we do.
Okay, so there is a caveat to that. I will say there's a caveat to that because they have social media, they have
Not like us.
streaming and stuff like that. No, not like us. But like, and yes, I will. And okay, so I will agree to that. For one, like when I was over there, probably still is in effect over there. Yes, there are government offices who literally troll the internet at every minute of every day in real time, blocking certain websites and certain pages and whatever for
They don't have TikTok.
information. No, they don't have TikTok, don't have Facebook, don't have YouTube, don't have Google or Gmail or anything like that. Of course.
It's all
Now,
WeChat.
the reason for that is because, like, for Facebook, perfect example, when Xi Jinping, current chairman, went to talk to Mark Zuckerberg about allowing the Chinese government to restrict posts depending on if they were inflammatory or dissentious, I guess the word would be, to the Chinese government, they would allow permission to block them, and Mark Zuckerberg said no. So that's why there's no Facebook in China. Now, when we talk about a freedom of information, there is a freedom of information, but it's insulated information. Yeah. Information still moves around within the country, like totally fine. But yes, it's restricted because it's insulated. That's
okay.
The point.
No,
Well,
I'm really enjoying listening to Brandon, but I just want to make a couple of quick points with Jeff's comments, because much of what Brandon said actually highlights the point, the lack of freedom. And when you look at, whether it be Facebook or a TikTok, which the Chinese use to spy on Americans, they don't need it in China. But but anyway, when you look at China, most countries most of their trading partners around the world have become very sensitized and very anti-Chinese because of the very xenophobic, very racially based Chinese policies towards foreigners, towards their neighbors. And the idea of Chinese dominance has really rubbed a lot of China's trade partners the wrong way. And you combine that with the inherent corruption, the theft of intellectual property, their overextended banking system with all the ghost cities. China is not an attractive place to go build your industries now. And I'd just like to point out, reference Apple. I believe it was announced today that Apple is going to be investing $500 billion to rehome its facilities.
Unbelievable. All right, well,
I will give credit where credit is due on that one, because culturally speaking, they are pretty in on all of that.
Well, we're gonna enjoy listening to you to have that view of China in the future. But we again have to take our next break. Please subscribe Third Side Convo. Go on YouTube, go on Facebook, and please check us out. Leave a comment. Check out our old shows, and we'll see you back after our last break.
Corona Cigar Company is your one-stop shop for all your cigar needs. Whether that's a brand new humidor, a box of those new cigars you've been waiting for, a top-of-the-line cutter or lighter, a place to enjoy the finest cigars and spirits with friends, or the only cigars grown right here in the Sunshine State, we've got you covered. Come visit one of our retail locations for the ultimate cigar experience. Visit us online at coronacigar.com.
Oak Ridge Gun Range is a family-oriented shooting range that has been in business for over 30 years. They specialize in basic firearm training and offer numerous services such as consignments, gun trades, gunsmithing, and concealed weapon classes. I even got my training for gun safety at Oak Ridge Gun Range. Great customer service, and firearm safety is what they do best. So find out more at oakridgegunrange.com.
All right, now it's time to land the plane. Now, this is going to be the segment that, of course, is if you can't say something nice. So, we've been talking a little bit, and Brandon's done such a great job. He's already learning about this final segment here. We thought we'd have to wait till the last 5 minutes. That what I'd like to do is for Bill and Jeff to possibly admit what the other person said, but let's start it out. So Brandon, you already belong to this. What about the other side did you really hit you that is actually a good point?
Well, definitely the concept of like using tariffs to encourage more local business and local manufacturing, but also yes, we kind of have to balance out what we're getting from one country versus what another country's getting from us.
Perfect. Okay, Bill.
I thought those were really good points.
Okay, Bill, tell me something about what Jeff said, because I know you agree with him. Do we have some responsibilities as being the U.S. that are affecting things, affects a lot of people, right? Bill, go.
Well,
give Jeff a kudo.
Well, what I like to give Jeff a kudo on is he does have a point that when you use tariffs, you do have to use them wisely. And I think as it comes to fruition and as they play out and it's shown that they are truly reciprocal and based on the tariffs that are imposed by our trading partners, one on an individual basis, a lot of those tariffs are going to come down. And I think a lot of his concerns are going to be alleviated on that.
Okay, so June or July, you'll be able to say, I told you so to Jeff. Jeff, however, puts the odds slightly different. But still, tell us what Bill says that makes sense, Jeff.
Well, I mean, I would, nothing would make me happier than to be able to get an "I told you so" from Bill in a couple months. That I would no, for real. I would be ecstatic. As Bob knows me very well, I'm never on here looking to win. I want to learn. And, when I'm talking to people like Bill and Michelle, it gives me faith that we're not as binary as it would appear.
All right. Michelle, you have really put the glue to this team together, so go for it, girl. On the other side.
On the other side.
I love it. Okay, tell us about Jeff and Brandon. Brandon was really good for his opening round, wasn't he? Or for his opening
Brandon,
show.
you were. Yes, no. I mean, absolutely a wonderful addition, though. Thank you so much. You know what I mean? And thank you for being on. And Jeff, you know what I mean? I always love your glasses and your sense of humor, and I adore you. You know what I mean? Super cutie. But it's nice to be able, I think that right now we're in such a period in our economic, we have such economic instability at the moment. We have a lot of discourse going on. And I think that right now it creates a lot of fear. And that comes from all aspects. It doesn't make a difference, you know what I mean, what side of the fence that we're on. We're in a spot where we've never been here before. We've never had such type of, dissension, some turmoil, some changes. I mean, huge changes that are going on with our current administrations. We've never seen anything like this before, to where we are, where all of us are at a point where we are trying to grasp it, understand it, trying to get a feed on how is it that's going to sit there and affect us, our partners, you know what I mean, our livelihood. And so absolutely on all sides of the fence, those are real serious concerns and they are valid.
Cool. All right. Who else would like to give us a final thought?
I have a thought. I would leave it with this from my end. Relative to tariffs temporarily causing costs to go up. Have you ever seen costs go up because of outside factors, and then when those outside factors disappear, the costs go back down to where they were?
What about the eggs?
About
and the
what?
bird flu?
Yeah.
The eggs and the bird flu. Did that? I mean, because the prices went up, you know what I mean? They were.
So are eggs right now the same price they were before the bird flu?
When went away, you know what I mean, the bird flu thing went away, our egg prices finally came back down.
They came down a little. They didn't come back down where they were. And in its opportunity for vulture capitalists, which is, kind of the name of the game, to raise prices and either keep them there or split the difference and say, "Ooh, we lowered them." We see it all the time.
Well,
and it's as a CEO, that's what I do too. But I'm not a psychopath, so I can't run a company.
Well, and Jeff, luckily you're not.
Not.
Jeff's not a cynic. He is actually a very positive person, and who knows what's going to happen. I mean, what Michelle said about the overall fear that's going on. Certainly, there's fear of do these people know what the hell they're doing? Okay? That's probably the basic fear. But at least we found out a little more about this stuff. We found out a little bit more about tariffs. I still wanted to figure out where the money goes, but I didn't ever get an answer to that one, but no one ever answers me anyway. Listen, subscribe on YouTube, go to Facebook, please leave a comment, and we will see you next week on another wonderful, fun show of Third Side Convo.